Welcome to the Toon Under podcast. Regular listeners will be pleased to know that you've got the XG wankers tonight. It's the super positive Jack in Brisbane, and it's the even more happy and positive Dimi down in Victoria. How are you doing, Dimi? How's things been in the Democratic People's Republic of Victoria today?
A bit strange, actually. It was boiling hot in the morning, afternoon, and now it's pissing down rain outside. So just another Melbourne day, but yeah, picking up the pieces from last night, and the last few weeks have been a bit tough to be a Newcastle fan, but nothing we're not used to. We've seen a lot worse and a lot shitter times. So I think context is always important. So yeah, I'm not as down as many people, but looking forward to going through it tonight.
Yeah, we'll get into that stuff. There's been a bit of sort of reaction going around. I think there always is on social media. And, you know, when you lose games like we have been doing, there's going to be a bit of kickback to that. But like you said, there's a lot of context to go into it. So we will talk all about that. We're obviously here to talk about the Manchester City game, review that game. We lost 2-0. So this is the third 2-0 defeat we've had in a row to what you would call traditional big clubs. So the season's kind of hit the buffers a little bit. So we're going to talk about that and see why we think that's happened, particularly kind of since the World Cup break. See if we can dive into that a little bit. But like you, I'm a positive supporter. I try and look at the big picture all the time. So it's going to take a lot for me to be too despondent about Newcastle United at the moment after the last sort of 20, 25, 30 years. That it does annoy people a little bit when we keep sort of harking back to things. But like I said, I think the big picture and the context is really important. So we'll get into it. But before we start, I don't know if you heard Eddie's press conference before the game. It was a really interesting press conference. There was 38 minutes on YouTube, which was about double the length it usually is. And we're going to talk about the team lineup in a minute, but he said something really interesting and un-Eddie Howe-like about Ryan Fraser. So I just wanted to get your sort of thoughts on that. What he basically said was he's training with the under-21s because he needs players who are committed to the club and that he doesn't have a future at the club, which was very sort of direct for Eddie. He doesn't usually talk like that. So what did you make of that statement he made?
Yeah, very interesting. Like you said, it's not something that we're used to hearing from Eddie, but when you step back, it is something that Ryan Fraser has done before. It's something that happened to him before at Bournemouth. So he does have form in that category, and for him to put the club out and put Eddie out as much as he has, something must have gone on behind the scenes. And obviously he hasn't been getting many chances. He had a few chances at the start of the season, didn't perform great, and hasn't really ever cemented himself as a key part of the squad. And he's probably fed up and frustrated, which is potentially fair enough. But the fact that he's been shunned and banished to the 21s is very interesting. And yeah, he's, like I said, for Eddie to come to that conclusion and to publicly say it as well, because Eddie doesn't usually give up much around the squad in terms of health or injury, anything like that. For him to publicly announce that, it's something serious must have gone on behind the scenes, I would say.
Yeah, and you never really know people, like, you know, you see footballers play football and you hear whispers about their application and the character, but you never know what's going on behind closed doors for people or what's happening in people's lives. Footballers are people just the same. But this is kind of twice now. This has happened with Ryan Fraser at Bournemouth. He left them with when they were mid-relegation battle in the COVID season, and he wouldn't play anymore because he didn't want to jeopardize a move, which fair enough on one hand, but supporters are never going to like that. And it kind of was a bit of a red flag about, you know, for potential clubs to see his behavior like that. And like you said, he has had a chance under Eddie Howe. Eddie knows him well, obviously, from his Bournemouth days. And there was a period last season where he played really well for a couple of games. I remember Brentford away, he was absolutely fantastic in that game. And it's not like, we're not blessed with an abundance of quality wide players. So something must have gone on, I think, for him to be booted out in this way. It's pretty unceremonious. It's just really interesting that Eddie Howe, who is he plays a very straight bat in press conferences. He never kind of gives journalists anything he doesn't have to. It was really interesting to hear him come out and say that. I wonder if he was maybe pushing for a move in January and nothing came of it. I think Southampton were linked with him on loan. But because he was a free transfer, he's probably on pretty decent sized wages as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in the summer. I think I had him as going anyway, even before this happened. So if we can get somebody to take his wages off us, then that'll be good in the summer. So the context for this Man City game, obviously we've had 2 defeats to Liverpool and Manchester United in the last couple of weeks, where the form has stuttered a little bit. But going into this game against Manchester City, we'd lost, I think it was 4 of the previous 7 games at the Etihad by 5 goals, by exactly 5 goals. I worked out it was 57% of the last 7 games or something would ship 5 goals. So even before they were taken over, it wasn't a happy hunting ground for us. We've never really done particularly well there, and obviously the gap in the gap in quality has just been astronomical, really, between them and most other teams, but between them and us. So we were kind of going into this one, maybe not expecting a result, but hopeful that we could get something. A bit of sort of feelings that maybe it's good that we've got the cup out of the way now, and that we can focus completely on the league for the last 15 games. So I think it's fair to say we were sort of not expecting going into this, but I think we felt like we did have a chat. We would have a chance if we were gonna play at our best. Would you kind of go along with that, Dimi?
Yeah, I think under Eddie and under this new regime, there's not a game that we go into just conceding defeat from kickoff. There's so many games in the past where you're dreading waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning because you know you're going to lose. You know we're going to lose most likely 3, 4, 5-0, and we're not going to put up a fight. But with Eddie, we're always going to put up a fight, and 9 times out of 10 that the players are going to look committed, structured, and we're going to have chances, which again we'll talk about tonight. We're having a few issues with scoring those chances, but I never thought it was an unwinnable game or a game that we couldn't get something from. Obviously, we're not favourites, and City is by far and away the best team. Even though they're second at the moment, I still think that they're by far and away the best team in England. So the fact that we're going into that game not confident, but knowing that we are going to give it a go and a possibility to get a result, I think that's a massive shift from where we have been.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a free hit now, is there? Like, I remember going into the Spurs away game. Obviously, we won that game, but I was thinking going into that, we were on really good form, and I just thought, right, this is a kind of a free hit. Like, it doesn't really matter if we lose this. Obviously, we went and won it, and that's the mindset of a winning mentality that we need to continue. So it's really good to be able to go into these games knowing that there's going to be a plan, and whether we execute it or not is a different thing. We're going to need better players in the future to be able to execute the plan. But we know there is a plan, and there's going to be a structure, and we're not going to give anyone an easy game at the moment. So let's have a look at the lineup. I'll get the slide up on the screen here for the people who are watching. When this came out, social media went into a bit of a meltdown, which can happen from time to time with Newcastle. The main issue seemed to be that Lascelles was in for Fabian Schär, but then it transpired that he had concussion, which, I mean, if he looked in a bad way in the cup final. He had a big black eye after he clashed with Martinez. So I don't know how he's being allowed to continue playing that cup final. Apparently there is a thing called delayed concussion, Keegan told us earlier, but I don't know, like he looked in a bit of a bad way in the cup final. So yeah, it was a bit strange that he was allowed to continue there.
But well, Botman was consoling him. Yeah, so just back to that, yeah. Botman was consoling him, I reckon, when he came back on. He looked in a bad way. And we were saying to the guys that were watching with it at the pub, we thought, he's definitely coming off. he looks in awful state. But I just don't think football has caught up with every other sport around the world in terms of concussion. There's not the same testing, it seems, or the same care that should be happening in terms of head injuries. And yeah, if you saw that clash and you saw his reaction share, he definitely wasn't 100% with it. So yeah, no surprise that he's got concussion or delayed concussion.
Yeah, and players are not going to say to the manager, I'm not feeling good, I need to come off. It's just not going to happen. And managers are not going to want to waste a sub early on in the game as well if they don't have to. That's why the concussion protocols are there, to make sure that doesn't happen.
Exactly. Well, there was a player for my team on Victory who copped the ball point blank from about 2 yards away, smashed in his face, and he was desperate to continue. And the doctors had to drag him off, and they showed the camera in the change rooms. The player was absolutely furious. He goes, "Why aren't you letting him back on?" Turned out he was concussed, and turns out he didn't play for the next 6 weeks. So it's nothing that you can take lightly or not put the right attention to. So the fact that he was allowed to play on was probably, in hindsight, the wrong decision by our medical team, and hopefully that's something that can be rectified in the future.
Yeah, and obviously Jamal Lascelles is your favourite player, so you'll have been really pleased to see him in the starting 11.
No, I wasn't. As you could probably imagine, and thinking that he's going to go up against Haaland, I thought Haaland for a hat trick every day of the week. So yeah, it wasn't great to see that team sheet, but you got to trust Eddie.
And I guess the other thing that they could have done here is put Targett in at left back and then move Burn into centre back. So that was something that a couple of people were saying that they would like to see. But Targett hasn't started a game for a long time. He's been out injured for a long time. I know Lascelles hasn't really started games either, but at least he hasn't been injured. So maybe the thinking there was he doesn't want to bring Targett in against Man City for his first game back. Yeah, it's a difficult one there. You just have to kind of trust that the coaching staff have got all the data and all of the information about fitness. And Burn hasn't been in good form, but before the last few weeks he had been doing all right. So but we'll talk about him through the game because unfortunately he was probably at fault for one of Man City's goals again. But the other change from the cup final team was Anthony Gordon came in for his first start. He came in for St. Maximin, who maybe was a little bit unlucky to miss out. And then the other big one that was causing a lot of people to be unhappy, myself included, to be fair, because I thought Isak was going to start. But Callum Wilson retained his place up front, despite patently being off form for the last few weeks. Albeit he did score against West Ham, which people are maybe forgetting a little bit. He did score. He's one of the only players who has scored for us recently, even though he has been missing a lot of chances as well. But what was your overall thoughts on that then? The Gordon in for Maxi dropping out and then Isak on the bench.
It seemed to me Eddie's plan was obviously we want to attack and we want to score goals, win the game. I think he wanted to hold the game as tight as possible for as long as possible, and then unleash Maxi and Isak with maybe half an hour to go against a tiring defense. I think he thought Gordon and Miggy will do a good job defensively on City's fullbacks. Obviously, in Gordon's case, we'll talk about in a minute, that didn't really pan out. He was out of position for the first goal, but I think that's what his thinking was, and he thought Maxi potentially could get pulled apart, and the fact that we won't have much of the ball, he may get exposed. So I can see the thinking. I just thought the way Maxi's been playing, I thought he deserved to start, and Callum Wilson definitely, for me, didn't deserve a start last night or this morning. I thought Isak had to start, and that for me was the one probably disappointing selection call.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And Isak's been working his way back to fitness, but he's only started. He started against Chef Wed in the cup. I think he might have started one
Liverpool
other game
as well.
Yeah, Liverpool. Yeah, so he's only started, and then that game was kind of a bit of a write-off early on because of the red card. So if the players need to kind of get some time to play together as well, so they can build up that understanding, don't they? I think that's the main reason I'd like to see Isak, and I think he's going to be our main striker for the next long period of time. He's a quality player. Again, though, maybe it's fitness, or maybe I think the thinking there about bringing the good subs on, attacking subs with 30 minutes left, which is exactly what happened in the end. I think that was part of it as well. So you do get the sort of meltdowns going on. So it's probably a good idea if that annoys you, which it does annoy me a little bit sometimes, to stay away from Twitter, I think, when the team's released. But Eddie's kind of is getting a bit more. He's got options now, so he's got Bruno back, and he's got options. He's got bench options. So there's always going to be some players who are going to be missing out, and that's not a bad thing. It's about, because that means we've got quality, strength, and depth, which we're going to have a lot more of, obviously, over the next few years. So that's going to be a big part of Eddie's job, isn't it? Going to be to sort of how do you keep people happy, and how do you maintain a balance for each game, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Man management's going to be key, and obviously, the better players we bring in, potentially there's going to be players with egos who want to play every week, and Eddie's going to have to manage that. Obviously, everyone's been rowing and pushing in the same direction under his stewardship so far, but eventually that's going to come a little bit more difficult when better players come in. So that's going to be, like you said, a very important job for Eddie to manage over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and he is opened up to kind of criticism about having favourites as well. You know, like he picks the same players a lot, and a lot of the time that is because he doesn't have any backup. But Callum Wilson he's worked with for a lot of years, so he trusts him. And you know, it's not long ago that Callum Wilson was playing out of his skin and getting into the World Cup squad. And we were sort of desperately hoping he was going to be fit all the time. So it just shows you how quickly sort of perceptions and things can change in football. But that was the team, the starting line. I'm not going to go through Man City's because it's just depressing how good they are. I looked at theirs, I was like, oh great, they've got Mahrez and Silva and whoever else on the bench. It's just it shows you though the sort of gap that we're going to have to try and bridge over the next over the next period of time. But the game started, and we were doing all right. We were sort of pressing Edison a bit, and he was making a few little errors. But then Gundogan had a header for them after 56 seconds, which he probably should have scored. So that showed straight away that they were going to be, you know, the new word is transition, isn't it? They're so dangerous on the transition when you lose the ball. And that came because we lost the ball on the edge of their area, and they just broke so quickly, and they could have scored then, really. But really, like it was mainly us. We had a corner that Lascelles won a header, which was probably part of the reason he was in the team as well. And then we had the first of our chances, which we're going to talk about these chances. It's absolutely ridiculous that we didn't even get a shot away with any of these chances. But they were all really good chances. The first one was Gordon's. So he was put through by Bruno, and then he had Kyle Walker with him. And it looked like Walker had tackled him and then just, you know, played the ball out. But it turned out he'd kicked it off his own foot. So he'd gone with his left foot, and it kind of scuffed off his right foot to begin with, and then it's sort of spurted away, and Man City were on the attack there. But that was a kind of signal, wasn't it, of things to come in this game with our attacking chances.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, and it gave the Everton fans who love you know, shouting about Anthony Gordon a bit of ammunition there for him as well. But it's his first start, you know, and he did well to sort of. It's good that he was direct and he was getting into the position in the first place. So I think we'll probably have to give him a bit of a break on that one. And it wasn't anywhere near as bad as the later misses either. So it's probably been overshadowed a bit by that. But then 14 minutes, Man City scored, and it kind of came from nowhere. It was Foden. It was so easy. Like he got the ball out wide, and he just ran into the gap. He just ran past Dan Burn like he wasn't there. And then poor Botman got another deflection on it, and it went past Pope this time. But that goal sort of came from nowhere. I wouldn't say it was against the run of play at that stage, but they certainly weren't sort of, you know, assaulting our goal or pressing us too much. I think we'd started pretty well, and then they did what the good teams do, and they just scored out of nothing. How did you see that goal?
Yeah, it was very frustrating, like you said. It's sort of like the seas parted when Foden cut in, and there was no one sort of coming towards Foden to put pressure on him. There was Gordon seemed to be out of position. He wasn't covering, so he couldn't make a challenge. And then as soon as Foden got in the box, everyone was shit scared to even go near him. So Bruno and Gordon sort of backed off. And when he's that close, the odds are, even if his shot doesn't directly go in, it's going to deflect. It makes it very tricky for Pope or Botman in that position. But for me, it started with Burn. I think Burn just showed him way too much space inside. And the Foden was obviously in great form yesterday. A couple of his touches were world class, but on his left foot, he's a left footer. You can't show him in like that. Obviously, Burn doesn't have the pace to stay with him, but you have to manage that space a lot better. And for me, Gordon had to push back in that space a lot quicker, and he did it, and we were punished. And that's the thing, when you're playing top teams or one of the best teams in Europe, slight mistakes, you miss the small details, you can see goals. And that's what's happening to us at the moment. Maybe if that same crossfield pass happens against 15 or 16 other Premier League teams, the right winger probably doesn't run all the way. He loses the ball, or he doesn't have the confidence. He cuts it back. It's one of those things that you're going to get punished against the good teams, and we want to be a good team, so we have to measure ourselves against City. And unfortunately, there was 2 or 3 mistakes there. Or there weren't even huge mistakes, but there were enough that a big team will punish you.
Yeah, and it is highlighting Dan Burn. He's not a left back, He's been playing there all season, and he's been in that sort of role because we've needed sort of the third centre back, and it's worked well, Like Trippier's been bombing forward, and he's been able to just sort of slot in into sort of a back three at times. But you don't get a lot from him going forward because he's just not a left back. It's not his natural position. And when he's up against Liverpool and when he's up against Man United and Manchester City, that's when you're going to notice, and that's when he's going to be punished for it. So would you say that it's probably, if Target's fit, it would be now's the time to sort of give Target a run and just take Burn out of the firing line for a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I thought at the start of the season, we all probably thought Target was going to be our first choice left back. I don't think anyone thought Burn was going to be the week in, week out left back. So the issue we've got with Burn, even if Cher's not playing, I don't think Eddie wants to play 2 left-footed centre-backs. So that was probably the reason why Lascelles came in more so than Target's not being fit. I think he wanted to have the right foot, left foot combination at the back in terms of the middle. But yeah, you're right. Burn seems, he doesn't have the same confidence for me as well. He's not snapping into the tackles as much as he was. Obviously, we know he doesn't go forward and overlap, but teams are obviously exposing him, and unfortunately it's costing us. And I think it's probably the right time to give him a rest and let him freshen up mentally more so than anything, and get Target in there, who's a natural left back who, for every game that he's played for us, I don't think he's rarely put a foot wrong and rarely let us down. So I think Target's more than capable to do a good job of left back and continue what he was doing last season.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a kind of consistent 7 out of 10 last season, sometimes an 8 out of 10. He was good. He was a good signing, and that's why we signed him in the summer. He's had that injury, but he's the best natural left back we've got at the club at the moment. It's probably a position we're going to target in the summer with the transfer window as well. Yeah. But after that, it's good. Newcastle could have kind of completely folded, and no one would have been surprised if City had gone and scored a couple of other goals in the half. But 2 minutes after the goal, Longstaff had a shot. This one was a bit strange. It sort of like wouldn't come down for him, would it? It was sort of bobbling a little bit, and was he just not quick enough to get his shot away? Because in the end, Ake blocked it.
Yeah, I think you just got to show more conviction. That position or that chance showed that he's not a natural goal scorer, and he doesn't feel comfortable in the 18-yard box. I mean, he did score 2 nice goals against Southampton, so credit where credit's due in the Cup semi-final. But, I mean, as soon as the ball's lifted over from Wilson, he's just got to hit it. He's just got to hit it, and who knows what happens. It might deflect. It might go through the goalkeeper's legs. You don't know. So you could just tell he was waiting for that perfect moment to strike it, but you don't have 5 seconds in the box to wait for the ball to come down. You just got to strike it. And unfortunately, it seems to happen to us all the time. The chances a lot of the time are falling to players who aren't natural goal scorers and aren't confident so much in those positions. So unfortunately, it was another one that went begging for us. And again, we didn't even get a shot on target. It was blocked out for a corner. So yeah, massive missed opportunity.
Yeah, so for those counting at home, that's now 2 chances that we've had, good chances. One of them was a missed kick from Gordon's wrong foot. This one was a block where Longstaff should definitely have got a shot away. But the worst, not even the worst, probably. It goes up in kind of increments in this game. But just before half time, I think the goal did throw us a little bit, and we were a bit sloppy after that for a while, without ever being kind of under siege. But we weren't playing as well as we could have been. But then on around 35 minutes, we put together this absolutely brilliant team move. Everyone touched the ball, and it ended up with Trippier heading the ball across, and Wilson was about 7 or 8 yards out.
Yep.
He just miskicked it. This is a guy who was playing up front for England, or he was in the England squad for the World Cup not long ago. And before the World Cup, everything he was touching was scoring. He was doing really well. But this is just a man who is just not confident, isn't it, at the moment? He just miskicked it completely. The ball went backwards or sideways, didn't it, in this? But you're kind of getting the feeling at this stage, Dimi, that this is not going to be our day in front of goal again.
Well, you're right. When you got, within 40 minutes, City away, when you got 3 gilt-edged chances that you can't even get one of those chances on target or a shot away, let alone on target, you're thinking you don't get 3 great chances away to the champions every week. So, look, it was, again, the beautiful move, like you said. It was, I can't remember how many passes it was, but it had to be over 30 passes. It was fantastic football. And Trippier laid it on an absolute platter for him. It just needed a confident striker, a confident strike. And from that close, it would have been a goal. It was very unlikely that Edison was going to stop it. So you could just tell, even the way he approached the ball, he wasn't confident. He didn't believe he was going to score. And it's time and time again, unfortunately for us, that we're just not showing the conviction in these positions. We're creating the chances. Call us XG wankers, call us what you want, but we're creating the chances. But for some reason, our attacking players or anyone who gets in those positions is just fluffing their lines time after time.
I was actually wondering about the XG for this game, because I think it came out as something like 0.58. So I was even wondering, did these chances even because they were so badly finished?
Because there was no shots
on goal.
Because they weren't shots. So Gordon's kicked his own foot. The ball's gone wide. So technically not a shot. Longy's shot was blocked. So that really wasn't a shot. Wilson's half started the ball that went sideways. So that wasn't a shot. And we'll talk about the fourth one. That was a complete miskick. So the chances, but because we haven't had a shot on target, they can't classify how good a chance that was. So yeah, XG wasn't our friend in this game, but those 3 chances, they were gilt-edged, and especially for our number 9, our striker, who's consistently scored goals for us, you'd back your house on him finishing that in form.
Yeah, and there's 2 kind of ways of looking at this. You can criticize the finishing, which is fair. You criticize the finishing, it was terrible. Or you can say, well, we're creating these chances. We're playing well enough away at Manchester City to create good chances. So it's whether you're a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person. There's both aspects of that can be true. We are creating good chances, but we are also missing them as well. And it's a pattern that's been happening especially over the last 4 or 5 games, I would say. But it's half time and it's only 1-0, and we've given a really good account of ourselves. What were you feeling at half time about how we might be able to change things in the second half, or what we should have done from here on?
Yeah, frustrated, because I thought we were probably more than matched them in the first half. I thought we were good for probably a goal, and they had a couple of chances. They scored 1 goal. We had 2 or 3 chances, didn't score any goals. So I thought we were good for a goal in the first half, and I thought we were in the game, and there was something there for us in the second half if we continued playing that way, and we got a bit of luck in front of goal.
Yeah, and it was good that we had the subs to bring on as well. So I felt like we were still very much in this. We needed to obviously take a chance or 2, but there was always that nagging feeling as well with Man City that they can just score from nothing. And that kind of is what happened in the second half. The first 15 minutes we were quite good. We had more possession actually, and the crowd were getting annoyed. Like you could tell that they were starting to get a bit antsy. Those lunchtime kickoffs in the UK are a bit strange because the crowd just don't seem to get into it. And, you know, the Etihad's not exactly a sort of white hot cauldron of atmosphere anyway at the best of times. I think they just sort of expect to turn up and win most of the time, which is what they do. But the first part of the second half, we were really good. And then we made that triple sub. And I was pleased to see that happen when it did, because I was worried he might have left it a bit later as well, towards the sort of 70-minute mark. But half an hour is a good stint of the game for Isak and Maxi and Willock, and positive substitutions, really good attacking subs. And just not long after that, Isak had a chance, and I don't know what actually. Oh no, hang on. First of all, there was the Joelinton chance. So what happened was we started playing. We were playing really well, and we were getting forward, and then we created another chance, which was the best chance of all of them. So you've gone from Gordon's missed kick to Longstaff's block to Wilson's missed kick, and then Joelinton's was the absolute worst of them all. Willock across the face of goal. He was 6 yards out. He only had the goalkeeper to beat, and he just didn't even kick it. Did he just miskicked it completely, didn't he? I don't even know if he touched it.
He didn't. He definitely didn't touch it. It was a great run by Joelinton. He timed his run perfectly. The ball from Willock was absolutely outstanding, and it was just begging for somebody to get his foot on it, and it was a goal. And you're thinking, as the cross came in, oh, this has to be a goal. And when Joelinton just completely misses it, you're thinking, what on earth do we have to do to get a shot away, let alone to score a goal? That was the moment for me that I thought, we're not scoring here. If we're missing clean shots from, again, that would have been 8 yards, maybe 8-9 yards out maximum. If we're not taking those chances, we're going to get punished. And soon enough, unfortunately, we did.
Well, it was classic Jigsaw Joe, wasn't it? At least he didn't. The only good thing is he didn't kick it off his own face this time. But
no.
Really, you know, any midfielder of Premier League quality should be scoring that. Like, not even attacking midfield. Any professional footballer really should be.
Not even Premier League quality. Yeah, that's a late run from a midfielder with no pressure on him, wide open, and he's completely missed the ball. And that's not. I'm not going to say park football, but most professional footballers would be putting that away. I would have to think,
or at least working the keeper, getting a shot.
Well, exactly right, getting a shot away. Exactly right.
And if you get a shot away from that distance, you're probably, you know, with the pace already on the ball, it's probably going to be a goal if it's on target.
Exactly.
So yeah, I was just thinking, what are we going to do here? We're not going to score a goal here unless we get a big strike of fortune, or goes in off Miggy's cock again or something like that, you know. And then a minute later, this was an incident where Isak had a chance, and I don't know why they didn't appeal more for a penalty for this, because he his first shot was blocked, and then he got a second one away, I think, and it went wide, or it went out for a corner or something. But then Edison wiped him out after that. So I don't know if you remember the Arsenal-Man City game a few weeks ago, where Nketiah, it was a similar kind of situation where he got his shot away and it went wide, and then he got a penalty after that. But Isak didn't even appeal for this, so maybe he knew the keeper had got a touch or something. I don't know what it was, but he didn't even put his hand up and say that was a penalty. And I don't even know if VAR checked this. So what was your sort of take on that one? Because for me, I was sitting there thinking, how have they not even shown as a replay or check this?
Well, the co-commentator, I think it was Andy Townsend, it might have been, he was all over it. He thought this might be a penalty because Isak's got the shot away. It was saved. Isak then got to the ball first, and it deflected wide for a corner, but Edison had taken him out without getting the ball on the second occasion. So he's clearly wiped out Isak, and I'm not sure why he didn't appeal. No other Newcastle players seem to have appealed. And I think a lot of the time this stuff happens not on peer pressure, but the referees can get pressured into looking at things. And the fact that no one even batted an eyelid that Isak didn't question it or go up to the referee, the VAR, for all we know, could have been having a cup of tea or could have been snoozing and not even worrying about what happened. So I thought, I would have loved to have seen a few more replays of what actually happened, but definitely it was worth a look. And another half opening for us that Isaac almost made pay.
And this was the best period of the game for us. We were playing really well, and it did start to feel like, even though Joelinton had just missed, we just thought if we could just get one of these in, this is going to be a really good game, and we're going to make a good game of this. But then 2 minutes later, pretty much exactly the same thing that happened in the first half. Bernardo Silva had been on the pitch for a minute or two, finds a bit of space. I think Trippier gave the ball away in the midfield. He finds a bit of space and he just puts it in the net. And then it's game over, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's game over. And again, it's from our own mistake. And like I said earlier, against the best teams, you make mistakes, they punish you. And it wasn't as if it was a catastrophic mistake in his own 18-yard box by Trippier, but even giving the ball away in your own half against City, they're good enough to punish you with that one moment. And if you look back at the goal, it was actually 2 mistakes from Trippier, because he gave the ball away, he's chased back, and he's actually got the toe on the ball that fed the ball into Haaland's path and into Silva's path. So he's actually made 2 errors on that play. But the finish from Silva is world class. It's just a toe bash, but that's all you need from that position. And before Pope can even react, the ball's in the back of the net. So it was a massive sucker punch, because, like you said, for the first 15, 20 minutes of the second half, I wouldn't say we were all over them, but we were the ones looking likely to score more so than them. And as that goal went in, you thought, we're cooked here. That's game over.
Yeah, I think the feeling for us of missing the chances as well, and then conceding 2 goals, I think it was going to be a massive ask for us to get back into it. It would have been just nice to have a goal,
Yeah, that's what I was hoping too, yeah.
But it was going to be a huge ask at that point. But not that much else happened in the game, and it kind of petered out into a comfortable 2-0 for them in the end. But I think that I was encouraged by the overall performance, and it sounds like a bit of a broken record keeping on saying this, and Eddie is saying the same thing, that we're playing well between the boxes. We're doing good stuff. Like the structures are good and the system's working. It's just we've stopped being so tight at the back because we're conceding some silly goals, either from set pieces or from sort of little mistakes that we're making at the back, which are being punished by world-class teams. And we've stopped scoring. We've gone from overperforming in terms of the XG. Like we were scoring a lot more than we technically could have been on the quality of chances, and we've gone from that to underperforming on it. So it's not like we've regressed to the mean. We've completely started underperforming there as well. So those 2 things combined, and the quality of the opposition, means that 3 2-0s in the space of a couple of weeks, and a lot of sort of concern about things. How did you sort of see that at the end of the game, and how worried are you by the current sort of form that Newcastle are in?
Worried is it's hard to judge how worried I am. Like you said, we're playing. I still think we're playing okay, and it's not like we're getting played off the park by any of these teams. Even these teams are better than us on paper. They've got world-class players on the bench in their 11. We're not getting outplayed by them. We're matching it with them for probably at least 2/3 or 3/4 of the match. But we're not making the most of our chances in the attacking areas. And like you said, we're conceding silly goals at the other end, and it's a recipe for disaster against the top teams. But like Shearer has said before, and I think he said before yesterday on Optus, the fact that we're still creating those chances has to give you some sort of encouragement. We're not completely barren and not going anywhere near the 18-yard box and not forcing any sort of threat on our end. There was actually a point in the second half too. We had more touches in City's box than they did in our box, which is huge. Usually we're playing City, like you said, we're copying 5 or 6 goals routinely at the Etihad. So that's a step forward. Obviously, no one cares about touches in the box. It's the goals that matter, and at the moment we're not getting the goals, but you have to still be encouraged by that we're matching it toe to toe with these top teams, and with a couple of tweaks, we're actually not too far away from that level.
A couple of tweaks and a bit of luck as well. You're always going to need luck against the top teams, but what the stats kind of back up what we've been saying there. So they had 56 possession to our 44% possession, which Not many teams will probably have that much at the Etihad. We had 5 shots and they had 11, but really we should have had 8 shots because Gordon's and Wilson's and Joelinton's probably don't factor into this because there weren't shots in the end, even though they should have been. And we restricted Man City to 3 shots on target as well. And we also had a handful of corners. But did the stats there kind of back up your reading of this game?
Yeah, in terms of City stats, they didn't seem to be peppering our goal, and it wasn't a normal City away game where our goalkeeper has to have an absolute worldie for us to keep the score down. It was obviously they scored their 2 goals and that they all seemed like they were in second or third gear, but they never seemed to have us really under pressure for constant spells, and that's credit to us. But again, that doesn't really matter if we're not putting the ball in the back of the net or we're not keeping it out of our net. So those stats do back up what I saw, but unfortunately doesn't change that we'd got another 2-0 loss.
Yeah, I'm still in the mode at the moment where I'm not worried about this because I know that it's going to turn. But the Wolves and the Forest games are huge games now because we need to get on the score sheet. We need to start picking points up. I think we need to try and get a minimum of 4 points from those 2 games to set us up going into the international break. And I feel a bit about these games how I did before we played Fulham earlier in the season and Brentford, where I felt like we hadn't won for quite a long time, and I felt like we just needed to win. And in that Fulham game, we got a real stroke of luck with the red card early, and then we were playing well in that game anyway. But then we hammered them, and then we hammered Brentford, and the season had liftoff then. So I think these 2 games coming up, we'll be doing previews of them in the coming weeks. But I think they could have a real sort of shot on the arm effect for our season and can banish the kind of sort of the blues that are hanging around the club at the moment a little bit from the cup final defeat and from these defeats against Man City and Liverpool. All it'll take is a good performance against Wolves and a couple of goals, and I think everyone will be feeling good again. And I'm confident that we can do that. Let's have a look at the league table. We're still sitting in 5th. Wolves did us a favour and they beat Spurs. If we're still high in the top 4, which there's no reason why we shouldn't because we've got 2 games in hand over Spurs. And we could probably do with Man United helping us out tonight and beating Liverpool. Brighton had a good win against West Ham, so they're only 3 behind us now with the game in hand. And Fulham are playing Brentford, I think, as well now. So that's probably good that both of those teams can't pick up points. But it's still looking good, isn't it? You look at this if you looked at this in August and said this is going to be the league table on the 4th or 5th of March, you'd be feeling pretty good about life, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think any Newcastle fan would have thought we've had the season that we've had so far. I don't think anyone thought we would be sitting in the top 4 for as long as we did. And like you said, we're still only 4 points off Spurs with 2 games in hand. And we play Spurs at home. We play Brighton, who's right behind us. We play them at home as well. So there's definitely scope for us to still get in the top 4. And like you said, it's just going to take hopefully that one game where we get a bit of luck. We might score a couple of goals, deflected goals or own goals, whatever the case may be, and then we're away again. But yeah, luckily for us, I think Spurs loss this morning was a good result for us.
Yeah, Spurs are so inconsistent. They just can't seem to string it. They're kind of winning more than we are, but they're also losing a lot more. So they can't seem to kind of string any decent run together. And they were put out of the cup quite embarrassingly, really, by Sheffield United because that was an opportunity for them to get their hands on a trophy. But it just shows you sort of like I was saying, if you looked at that in August, but that would be without any of the context of going on this kind of run without wins. So it just shows you why the way that it can be perceived. Like you need that kind of context around it to be able to say, well, this is good or this isn't good, you know. And obviously we were up in 3rd at one point, so and we were beating Spurs away, and we were drawing at the Etihad, at the Emirates and at Old Trafford. So it was looking like we could be sort of favourites really for a top 4 position. But teams over the years have quite often got into that position and then have fallen away a bit. And you just look at the teams around us and their quality that they've got, and it's going to be a big ask. But I think I still feel confident that we can give top 4 a real good shot. What we're going to do now is have just a little break, and we'll be back. And I want to talk about the form since the World Cup, because that's been a bit of a sort of a bit of a topic of discussion, and people were talking about what has caused this slip. Is it a blip, or is this just a regression to what we are? So we'll be back in a minute, and we'll get into that. So we always knew that this was going to be a strange season with the World Cup right in the middle of the season, and that was the last game we played was against Chelsea in November, and we won that, and we were on a really good run. And then we had the 6-week break for the World Cup, and it's also been a bit different because the League Cup was sort of squeezed. There was only one round of the League Cup before the World Cup, I think, and then or 2 rounds maybe, and then the rest has been squeezed into a short space of time. So there's been a lot of people saying that the World Cup halted our momentum, and that's caused a big problem for us. But I question that, and I'm going to explain that, because I'm going to go through all of the fixtures and all of the results since the World Cup. There's been 15 games in 3 different competitions. The first game back was against Bournemouth in the League Cup, and we won that 1-0. The first Premier League game back was against Leicester, and that was 3-0, which was one of the best results of our season so far. And then you had the Leeds game at home, which was 0-0, which we should have won that on the balance of play. We had the 0-0 away at Arsenal, which was a really brilliant result and thoroughly deserved draw. And then there was the Chef Wed game, 2-1 in the Cup, the FA Cup, which we made 8 changes for. So that was a bad result, but in the end, that didn't really matter as much because of what happened after that with the League Cup. Then there was the League Cup game against Leicester. So we've beaten Leicester twice since the World Cup. That was the Dan Burn game in the League Cup. And then Fulham came to town, and we kind of got lucky in that game because Mitro missed the penalty, and then we scored a last-minute winner. But that's 7 games post World Cup up to that point, and we've won 4 of them. So we've still been winning games post World Cup. So that's why I don't think you can blame the World Cup, I think, for the kind of blip we've got at the moment. Then there was the Palace game in the league, which was 0-0, and which I instantly forgot the moment it finished. And then there was the back-to-back games against Southampton in the League Cup, which we won 1-0 away and then 2-1 at home. And that was why losing in the FA Cup didn't matter as much, because we still had that break in between those games, so we could focus on the League Cup. And then there was the 1-1 against West Ham. This is where it starts getting a little bit more disappointing, and where I think performances have tailed off a little bit. There was the 1-1 against West Ham, which was probably a fair result on the day. There was the 1-1 against Bournemouth, which might have been our worst performance of the season. We were really not good in that game. Apart from the Bournemouth home game, was probably the equal worst performance. And then it has come the last 3 games. So the defeat to Liverpool, mitigating circumstances, down to 10 men, but we're already losing 2-0. There was obviously the League Cup final, and then there was yesterday's game against Man City. So I know it's a bit kind of painstaking going through those 15 games, but I just wanted to do that to demonstrate that I don't think you can blame the World Cup break for a loss of momentum or a loss of form, because across the period of time, we're still winning games after the World Cup. The overall record is we've played 15, won 6, drawn 5, and lost 4 since the World Cup. And we in the league, though, we've played 9, won 2, drawn 5, and lost 2. What do you make of the form since the World Cup? Like, having a little bit more look at the detail of it, what's your main reason, do you think, that this is sort of that this blip has happened in the last couple of weeks, or the last month or 6 weeks, however long you want to say it's gone back for?
Yeah, so like you illustrated, it's just the league form for me that has dipped. Obviously, we've had the League Cup for a month and a half. Our sole focus virtually was on the League Cup. We were 2 legs against Southampton, the game against Leicester. They were the big games for us. Obviously, we weren't ignoring the Premier League, but the League Cup was one we were targeting, especially being in the quarters and the semi-finals. You want to make the final and obviously try and win it. So it seems to me the league form has been the only thing that's dropped off. But if you go through each individual league game, probably besides the Bournemouth one, we've played quite well, and we've created enough chances to win games. And sometimes the ball doesn't roll your way, and the Leeds game, that was the one where everyone seemed to think they were playing rugby. They were shooting the ball over the goal. I think Longy missed 2 or 3 that day, and everyone got on him. And there was the West Ham game. Obviously, we drew 1-1. Wilson probably had 3 chances that game, only scored 1. What other game? There was the Palace game. We drew 0-0. That was a bit of a dire affair. But again, Liverpool has drawn 0-0 all at Palace. Man United has drawn at Palace. So Palace draw away is probably not the worst result, as much as people are thinking. I think the main thing that's really hurt us is obviously the goal scoring. Everyone knows that, and we're not scoring goals. And it's compounded by the fact that we're actually starting to concede some goals now. Previously, we weren't. I think there was a moment where Pope didn't concede a goal for about 2.5 months. Obviously, that wasn't going to continue, and we're going to start conceding goals. And unfortunately for us, when he's started conceding goals, or we've as a club conceding goals, all the goals in the attacking end have dried up. So it's been a double whammy for us. But goal scoring for me is probably 90% mental, and it seems to me mentally we're not with it. We don't have the confidence, we don't have the conviction in front of goal, and sometimes that's very hard to get back when you don't have it, or it's very hard to lose once you have it, like we saw at the start of the year. Miggy Almiron, who for 3 years never looked like scoring a goal, was scoring goals left, right, and centre. So that's hard to sometimes to measure, but I think that's been the issue for us, the conversion of chances, more so than anything else. The performances haven't been horrible, they haven't been terrible. It's the conversion that has exacerbated the issues, and really just in the Premier League, because the league, the cup form was quite good. Obviously, we got to the final.
And how much of because this is another sort of narrative that could be thrown at the team, and I actually think this has got more to do with the league form than the World Cup break. But how much of a distraction do you think the cup was? Eddie always said the right things about we're not going to be distracted and we'll focus on the next game. But then he admitted in his pre-match press conference for the Man City game that it was a distraction. It's human beings, it's human nature. The whole city was mental for 3 weeks. Like, no one could think or talk about anything else. So it's natural that fed through to the players as well. How much of a distraction do you think that was? Or do you think the fact we were winning in the cup could have kind of should have bred confidence for the league?
I'm not sure it was a distraction. I think, obviously, everything that everyone's talking about is going to be the cup final in Newcastle. But I think that what really hurt us was Bruno's red card, to be honest. I think 2-1 up against Southampton, the game's done where we get a win and Bruno gets sent off. Obviously, it wasn't a great challenge, but we've seen many challenges like that in the Premier League not go punished. He was unlucky. He got punished and he missed 3 games, and that seemed to start our momentum on the night. It started our momentum. Everyone thought, oh shit, Bruno's out for 3 games. Is he going to miss the final? Thank goodness he doesn't miss the final, but he misses three league games. So that was a huge blow for me, and that was more so than the cup run and looking forward to Wembley, hoping not to get injured. I think it was purely the disruption that Bruno caused by him not being in the team, I think was the main thing. And you can see how different a team we are with him in the squad, and the fact that we don't have Shelvey anymore, or we don't have that depth in midfield, it just exacerbated everything. And unfortunately, it was a perfect storm of shitness in the last few weeks.
Yeah, that was the other thing that I had was Bruno as well. He's just such a massive. That was the first league game against Man City that we've actually lost, that he's been in the team. So his record before today was, I think, 17, and we'd won 10 and drawn 7 or something. So he's so important to the team. He's a world-class footballer. So, and I'm not sure he's actually been fully fit either when he has been back. Like he's got an ankle problem. He keeps holding his ankle. And it's the same ankle that he injured against Fulham as well. So I don't know if he's not fully fit, but we just can't afford to do without him. He's just too good. He's too important for us.
Yeah, I think you could see yesterday there was a moment when he came off after getting some treatment. Eddie was sort of look him in the eye and give him a pat on the back saying, you can do this, Bruno. You sort of, we need you to push on. We need you to push through this ankle injury. Because I think if we were in City's position, we got the depth that we've got on the bench, or that they've got on the bench, I think there's no doubt that he would have come off, because he definitely looked proppy and wasn't moving as freely or naturally as he normally does. But unfortunately, in the spot we're in with the lack of depth, we need Bruno to somehow soldier on.
Yeah. So yeah, there's been like you said, it's been a perfect storm, and there's been a kind of a combination of factors that have happened. And then some players have lost a bit of form. Trippier his form's dropped. Burns' form has dropped. And Wilson, obviously his form has dropped as well. So that's happened as well. But I really do think the cup was a huge distraction, and I was really pleased when just to get the final out of the way, so we can concentrate on these games coming up in the league. I think at the end of the season we'll kind of categorize the season in 3 sections. I think it'll be pre-World Cup, and then it'll be post-World Cup, but post-World Cup, but pre-Cup final. And then I think it'll be post-Cup final. So I think there'll be the 3 kind of sections. This game was always going to be difficult against Man City, but we've still got 14 league games to go, a lot of good home games as well. So I think that if we can, even if like pre-World Cup we were fantastic and overperforming, probably we were underperforming after the World Cup and before the Cup final. And if we can just sort of perform at moderate, as we should do over the next 14 games, I think we might not get top 4, but I think we'll definitely end up in top 6. And I think when all's said and done, that'll be a good season.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And like we keep saying, perspective is very important. And there's 14 league games to go, which is a lot of points to play for. And I think that now that that's the cup's out of the way and there's nothing else to sort of distract us, I think it's going to be good for the team to just purely focus and get back on the winning run. And once we get on a run, we've done it before, we do get on a bit of a streak. We did it last year. I think twice we got on 4 or 5 game win streak. So once we get that first one going, we might be able to knock off a few wins in a row.
And the final thing I just want to talk about is there's been a bit of, I'm just going to call it, there's been a bit of bedwetting and pant pissing going on Twitter today. It's football fans. Football fans are fickle. It's social media. People on social media are loud. But I think it's always going to happen with big football clubs. Maybe it is. But I was having a bit of sort of back and forth with people on social media a bit about this, because I've seen people saying that certain players are shite, Trippier's shite, Wilson's finished, stuff like this. And maybe it's just heat of the moment stuff, but maybe I should ignore it. But some of it's just, it oversteps, I think, from criticism, which is valid. Like, you can criticize bad form. It's fine. We've criticized the finishing tonight. It's been shambolic. But I think you can just do it in a way that's not sort of throwing everything out as everything being shite and everything's being terrible. And I understand that a lot of the people who want to criticize don't like it when people come to them and say, well, look where we were last season, or look where we've come in 18 months. I can understand that as well, because they're looking at the here and now. They want to see games as like a one-off, in a one-off context. And they're right that the finishing's been bad and that things need to improve. But you can't kind of look at the performances at the moment and the results without taking into account the whole context. And that's why I'm just always happy. I'm always happy because of where we are and compared to where we were, and that's the context. And that's not saying that I'm going to accept defeat or that we should have a loser's mentality, because that's not true. But it's just appreciating that this is 18 months into a huge rebuilding project, and that you can't look at things in an isolated way. And an example of that is that sort of Eddie Howe's got huge credit in the bank because of how he has done since he's come in a way that, for example, Steve Bruce didn't. So Eddie gets to make some different selections than what fans think he should do, because he's got a lot of credit in the bank and because he's a good manager and an intelligent man who knows what he's doing. Not like when Steve Bruce played Ryan Fraser in like a false 8 or whatever it was away at Sheffield United. So the overall context is that we've lost to Liverpool, Man United, and Man City all season. Our first team, we played a reserve team against Sheff Wed. We've got to a cup final and we're 5th in the league, and we're less than a year and a half into the new regime. Football's hard, There's always going to be peaks and troughs in form. We're always going to pick up form. We're always going to lose form. We're always going to lose games. This is high level elite sport, and it's hard. You can't win every game. You can't draw every game. Things are not going to go your way sometimes. And I don't know just what purpose it serves other than making people feel a bit better to have a little bit of a rant on social media or something. But I just think we need to just understand where we are. Accept that there are problems. The club accept that there's problems. There's a lot we need to work on. But like I keep saying, we're sort of 18 months into this huge rebuild, which is going to probably kick into overdrive this summer as well when we get some sponsorship deals and we get some better players. So that's just my sort of little bit of a rant, I suppose, about social media. Maybe the best thing to do is just to stay off it when we've lost, because it's going to happen. But what do you think sort of causes this, Dimi, in this day and age? Do you think it's because everyone's got a voice on Twitter straight away, or do you think it's the instant need for gratification and excitement and results? What do you think it is?
I just think people are delusional, to be fair. I think they were probably a bit spoilt by how good we've been in Eddie's 18 months. Since he came in January, we were not losing many games. We were winning most games and playing really well, and everything was going our way. And all of a sudden we hit a snag and the shit hits the fan and everyone loses their marbles. So it's context is everything, and there's no right-minded supporter who looks at our team and looks at Man City's team and thinks, oh, we're rubbish. We've gone to that. How can we lose 2-0? Or how are we possibly not getting a result against Liverpool, against Man United? These squads have been building for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. They've got millions and millions of dollars of players on the bench. We've still got, let's call a spade, potentially championship players on our bench who are having to contribute for us because we just don't have the depth. So as long as you always keep that in the back of your mind, you're not going to...
And I think on that happy note, I think we'll call it a day. We've done well here, Dimi, to keep a defeat podcast sound pretty positive and pretty upbeat. I think we were the right guys for this podcast.
Definitely. I think our good friend Lee is definitely going to enjoy the positivity. But it's not all doom and gloom, and there's definitely blue skies ahead. The next couple of games are very winnable, so hopefully we're back to winning ways.
Right, we'll be back for a preview of the Wolves game midweek. So please subscribe, please like, please comment. We'll love the interaction, and we will see you then. Have a good one, Dimi. Enjoy your Sunday night.
Cheers, mate.
Take care.